There is a watch that costs about as much as a decent dinner for two, is sold worldwide on the strength of American military heritage, has not been built in America in over 50 years, and is made by a company that, in any meaningful sense, has been dead since before the moon landing. Its dial carries a name from a Pennsylvania factory that closed in 1969. Its movement is built by Swiss engineers in Bienne, on the same workbenches as watches that cost half as much, and it is sold for about $500. This is the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical. The reason there is still a watch on Earth that says Hamilton on the dial, the reason a Swiss conglomerate is still using a name from a closed Pennsylvania factory, is one of the strangest acts of brand resurrection in the entire watch industry. My name is Lucas, and let's talk about what your $500 watch actually says about you. To understand how a Swiss factory ended up with a Pennsylvania nameplate on its watches, you have to go back to a moment in 1969. That was the moment the original Hamilton effectively died. Hamilton Watch Company was founded in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 1892. For most of the 20th century, it was one of the most important watchmakers in America. Its pocket watches were the official timekeepers for major American railroads, in the era when train schedules ran the country. In both World Wars, Hamilton was a primary supplier of military watches to American and Allied forces. The original field watches that the modern khaki line imitates were on the wrists of GIS in Normandy and the Pacific. That heritage is real. The men who built those watches in Lancaster were real. Then came the quartz crisis. In the late 1960s, Japanese companies released cheap, accurate quartz movements that destroyed the economics of mechanical watchmaking. American manufacturers had no answer. Hamilton tried one anyway. In 1972, Hamilton released the Pulsar P1, widely credited as the world's first commercial digital LED watch. It was cased in 18-karat gold and priced at $2,100, which is roughly $15,000 in today's money. When I first read the Pulsar story, I had to check 3 sources. Hamilton invented the digital watch, and it killed them. The Pulsar was a technical triumph and a commercial cliff. By the time the watch was on jewelers' shelves, Hamilton was already collapsing. The Lancaster factory had closed in 1969. By 1971, Hamilton was about to disappear entirely, and the people who saved it were not Americans. The Hamilton Watch Company, founded in Lancaster in 1892, timekeeper of American railroads, supplier of Allied wrists in 2 world wars, was effectively dead. And what happened to its name next is the part of this story most people who own a Hamilton have never heard. Which is why what happened to Hamilton in 1971 is one of the most consequential and least talked about acquisitions in modern watchmaking. In 1971, Hamilton was bought by a Swiss conglomerate called SSIH. SSIH already owned Omega and Tissot. A few years later, SSIH merged with another Swiss group, ASUAG, in a chain of restructurings that eventually produced what we now call the Swatch Group. Hamilton, the American railroad watchmaker, became a Swiss brand wearing American clothes. The dial still said Hamilton. The watches were no longer American. Under Swiss ownership, the brand was redirected. The khaki line, the military-styled watches that today define Hamilton's identity, was developed and grown under Swiss management. The current Khaki Field Mechanical, the watch in this story, launched in its present form around 2018. It uses an ETA-H50 movement, a hand-wound caliber with an 80-hour power reserve. You can take it off on a Friday afternoon and put it back on Monday morning, and it will still be running. The case is 38 millimeters of brushed steel, small enough to feel like the 1940s watches it imitates. Retail is about $500, cheap by Swiss luxury standards, expensive for what is mechanically inside it. Then came the cultural moment. In 2014, Christopher Nolan's Interstellar prominently featured Hamilton watches. In 2019, Hamilton released the Khaki Field Murph, named after the film's Murphy Cooper character. It sold out sold out. My first real watch was a Tissot from the same Swatch Group. Years later, I learned what was inside it. It was the same heart that beats inside a Hamilton. Because the part of this story I haven't told you yet, the part about what is actually inside your $500 watch, is where this gets uncomfortable. The moment you understand who actually built your Hamilton, and where, and what watch sitting next to it on the same factory bench costs half as much, the entire story changes. But the cultural success of the Khaki Field Mechanical hides something the marketing copy never mentions. That is where this story actually breaks. Before I tell you what is actually inside the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, you need to know one thing about how the Swatch Group is structured. The Swatch Group does not just own Hamilton. It owns Tissot, Mido, Certina, Longines, Omega, Rado, Breguet, and Blancpain. The brands are positioned at different price tiers, and the components, especially the movements, are shared across them. The ETA H50 inside your Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical is part of a movement family used across the lower and middle tiers of the Swatch Group's portfolio. Variations of the same base ETA caliber are inside Tissot watches that retail for half the price. Variations are inside Mido and Certina watches you have probably never heard of. They are built by the same Swiss workforce in the same Bayonne facilities, by people who have never been to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The Lancaster factory was closed in 1969. Most of the original buildings were repurposed. There is no living continuity, no employees, no machinery, no production linking the modern Hamilton to the American company whose heritage it sells. The watch on your wrist is not built by people who know what a Hamilton GGW113 is. It is built by Swiss employees who, when their shift ends, walk past Tissot watches on the way out the door. I do not think Hamilton is doing anything wrong. The watch is good. The movement is reliable. The marketing is just marketing. But the gap between what you think you bought and what you actually bought, that gap is the entire story. The Hamilton on your dial is not a company. It is a trademark Swatch Group bought 5 decades ago and has been carefully maintaining it ever since. So this is what your $500 watch actually says about you. You think it says, I have taste. I respect heritage. I am above the influencer-driven hype cycle. What it actually says is, you bought a story. Not a bad story. The Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical is a genuinely well-made watch. It just does not mean what you thought it meant. And this is not really a Hamilton problem. It is a $500 watch problem. At this price point, almost everything in the case is cultural cosplay, heritage. You can buy off a shelf, identities printed on a dial, narratives that exist mostly in the marketing copy. American whiskey brands are owned by Japanese conglomerates. American heritage clothing is sewn in Vietnam. The Hamilton on your wrist is a Swiss watch wearing an American name. A $500 watch is rarely a watch. It is a costume. And the only thing that genuinely separates a smart buyer from a marked one is knowing which costume they are wearing. What was the first watch you ever bought thinking it told the world something about you? Let me know in the comments below.